pizza boy over there. No, I don't know.
I want an AED that does that noise when it's like, press the button for shock now. You press it. Resume CPR. In 1996, Scholastic began publishing Animorphs. Over the next 6 years, Katherine Applegate and her husband, Michael Grant, under the pseudonym K.A. Applegate, produced 54 main series books, several spin-offs, and inspired a TV series, graphic novels, and a cult following. We can't tell you where we live. We can't even tell you our last names. But we can tell you our thoughts and feelings on this series, book by book. I'm Miranda.
I'm Eddie.
And I'm Chris.
And we are the Anidorks. These may be kids' books, but we discuss dark themes and mature content. There may also be some explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Right, so chapter 17.
So now we know where dogs come from. We know how the sausage gets made, so to speak.
Yes, the wiener dog. And he's like, I helped build the pyramids. Oh, no, I was like a slave, not like an architect. It's fine.
I don't know.
I liked it.
Yeah. No. It says, I was a slave. I helped the quarry to stone. And it's like, did you help?
Slaves are such good helpers.
Yeah.
No.
I know.
It's so cringe. Yeah. It's so
and then
cringe.
He casually drops on us that, because the Pemalite homeworld has like 4 times the gravity, we can just fucking body people. We're super fucking strong. Mm-hmm. I had to pretend to be weak and like suffering and dying. It was really hard for me actually to pretend that way.
Oh my God.
The implications are,
yeah, the implications are so
and that they're nonviolent by nature.
And they also, but yes, that's true. They're nonviolent by nature, so they literally couldn't fight back. Like when they walked into human
society,
need to be happy? Like, you're a slave.
Did they need to be happy?
That's a good point. So some other Chee roll up, and there was like a parallel in my brain here for a moment. I don't know why, but just in my head, it was like, you see, when our creators made us, they hardwired us for nonviolence. We're not capable of hurting another living being. No Chee has ever taken a life. And then we see 4 Chee angrily walking toward us. And I was like, so sure that someone was going to be like, yeah, it's like, well, we were about to.
Yeah.
And so, yes, these other Chee come up, and this particular, one of them steps forward and is like, humans in Andalite, what have you told them? And Eric's like, I told them fucking everything, because they're the Andalite bandits. Okay, they're the ones who've been fighting the Yeerks. We've just been sitting by and letting them do this shit, and they're the ones who are actually fighting. And they're like, but we're Chee, we don't fight.
And at this point, this older Chee turns and introduces herself and says,
well, older for now. She puts up a hologram of the old woman.
Right. Because they take turns being little and old, right? Or young and old.
They age. Yeah, he's like, we age through a life cycle in our hologram.
Right,
and
they're all old. I'm sorry. Yeah. But what I mean to say is she turns to introduce herself, and this pissed me off so much. This is what pissed me off. I am Chee Ionos. My human name for now is Maria, she said. What is the correct protocol here? Because we now know that her name is either Chee Ionos or the Chee Ionos. I don't know what the grammar construction is here. Right. But then we have to go by frickin' Maria.
I think they're just doing the human names maybe to like defer to them.
I'm just saying.
The Eric thing. Yeah. Eric's at least using Eric to be like, hey, this is how you know me, so you can just call me this. And so I guess maybe when she rolls up, but no, it is silly.
It just feels unnecessary. But I mean, maybe the implication is that she's been existing in culture. I just met a girl named Chee.
Mar-Chee-A.
Thank you for making the joke actually happen, though.
We were setting up. No.
So Eric is like, Maria, listen. You gotta listen to me. If humans die, what of the dogs?
If the dogs die?
What of the dogs? The dogs need humans. If we do not
dogs?
save the humans, we will see the dogs die. We will see the last remnants of our Pedialyte creators die.
Do you want to see a bunch of dead dogs? Because I got a bunch in the back of the phone.
During this fight and this argument, we get a whole bunch of like random lore drop. So we find out like, okay, we know that the Yeerks are interested in MatCom. We learned that, and that's that company that was courting Marco's dad. And like Eric drops this whole thing that he knows from infiltrating the sharing. He's like, which apparently the other Chee did not know that he was doing. But I want to know about Jenny. Why isn't she here?
Yeah. Why not just have her show up?
Because she's working with him. She then has also infiltrated the sharing. So that's 2 Chee who have infiltrated the sharing that these people didn't know about. And like the bigger a secret is, the harder it is to keep. What's going on here?
That's a good point.
Eric says, after he's like, they're working with MatCom, he's like, they're trying to build a master computer to infiltrate and rewrite all the software in all the computers on Earth. When they have achieved sufficient force among humans, they will launch this computer bomb and in a flash control all computers. This is Y2K.
They invented Macromedia Flash to cause Y2K.
Yeah.
But we find out that the way they're going to have the power to do this is that they obtained a crystal from a Dayang
trader.
And the Dayang didn't know what he had. And it was something so sophisticated, way more sophisticated than anything an Andalite could create.
We don't get access tail twitching.
Yeah, no, more than 50,000 years old. And the Yeerks know what it is. And so does Maria, because she goes, a Pedialyte crystal, which you can buy on the stores now, just dissolve in water.
I just want to hammer it home. Like, we get lore dumps so infrequently in these books. We really have to wait for them because there's the core aliens that we hear about every book. We just heard about 4 new aliens: Chee, Pimalites, Howlers,
And Dayang.
It's insane. It's just like out of nowhere. It's like when we were on the mothership.
So there's a Pimalite crystal. With the Pimalite crystal, the Chee could rewrite their own internal systems. They could erase the prohibition against violence. We could be free, is what Eric says.
Free to fight.
Free to fight. And this sets off a whole debate because most of the Chee, do we have a sense of how the numbers fall?
At least a good number. I don't know.
I'm going to say Jenny sides with Eric, but other than that, we have no evidence that anybody else
I would say there's probably at least a couple other, but not, I don't have a real sense of how many of them there are.
Yeah.
So like if there's 50, maybe 5 people.
Yeah.
But if there's 12, definitely just Eric, and Jenny's probably just humoring him.
Yeah.
Right. It's probably like they're getting to know each other.
Yeah. So we do get a little thing here. So they don't really dig into this argument yet. So Maria's going, people like Crystal, you can't do this, Eric. Eric turns away. If we can get the crystal, there's very little we can't do. Our strength joined with the Animorphs, the Yeerks would have to double their forces just to contain us. Axe asks, how did you convince the Yeerks that you are one of them? And Axe opens up his head and shows that he has a Yeerk captive.
Not X.
Eric, sorry. It's like the Jake thing.
Eric.
What a twist. Eric opens up his head, and there's a Yeerk held captive inside. Like tiny wires no thicker than hairs wrapped around it. And Axe actually does his Yeerk. He can't hold it back. So Eric says, the Yeerks believe I am human. I accepted infestation. But of course, the Yeerk cannot make a controller of me. I made a place for him instead. He sees nothing, knows nothing. I tapped his memory, not the other way around.
No explanation for how.
Yeah. He can do a lot of things. The number of skills that Eric has on his chart by the end of the book.
He immediately says that, I am able to keep it alive on my own using my internal power to generate a Cantrona.
Yeah, which is insane. That's game breaking.
Marco doesn't like this system, really. I think he admires it. When Eric explains about how he creates a hologram of a little Yeerk plopping into the pool, very Cassie episode 4.
Drop in the Rock.
Yeah.
But much more sophisticated.
Episode 4 of the TV show, which is now available as premium content on our Patreon.
Or will be in a couple months.
Well, that episode will be dropping in a couple months, but you can go watch episode 1 right now.
Right
and episode
now,
2's
right the fuck
coming
now.
in the next weeks.
We get a real cute little note here that apparently the Yeerks don't really communicate as Yeerks in the pool. They're not like chumming it up.
Man, am I right?
Yeah. But so, yeah, they're like, okay, so there's this, you've got this Yeerk, there's this crystal. What exactly do you want, Eric, is what Jake says to him. And Eric's like, oh, well, you know, we could be allies, but we need that crystal. We need that crystal, but how to get it? They have a maze of defenses. It's in a room at the heart of the Matcom building. There's Hork-Bajir everywhere. Elite Hork-Bajir warriors, the best.
And then if that's not enough, he goes further. It's nesting dolls of what the threats are. The
right.
crystal itself is guarded by an ingenious system. It is concealed in a room of absolute darkness. Absolute darkness.
Absolute darkness. Yes, no light and touch sensors everywhere. And to sum it all up, Marco says, so to get to the crystal, you'd have to be able to find it without seeing it and avoid the wires that are also invisible in the darkness. And Eric says, it's like finding a needle in a haystack when you're blindfolded and can't touch a single piece of hay.
Thank you. That really cleared that up for me, Eric.
Eric's been around long enough to see the first performance of Hamlet, and that's what he comes up with in the spot. That's like an argument against immortality. That's where
New ideas come from the youths. But it is also like we have that moment where Cassie's like, I think I know a way we can do this.
There is one thing we can do.
There's one animal that we could use. And Mr. King's walking down the stairs and she's like, no, I got it, Mr. As I was saying, there's a way we can do it. If we want to, that is. We need to decide if we want to.
And Maria puts forward this very strong, she do not hurt, she do not kill. That is not what she is about.
She don't.
Every other species.
she loved building the pyramids. She was okay with it.
She loved it.
She was
She's
helping.
like, we remained at peace. We remained neutral and at peace. Why would you want to stop that?
She don't.
She don't.
So
She don't.
I want to point out something about Maria that I noticed. There aren't that many moments where she speaks, but Maria never says. There's no Maria said. Maria cries, Maria whispers, Maria gasps. She is just constantly on another level.
Is that true?
I just noticed that every time she spoke, it was so dramatic. Eric wants to find this crystal so that they can rewrite their systems, so that the Chee can join forces with the Animorphs to fight the Yeerks, because the Chee, there's hints, no, it's explicitly said at this point, they could be incredibly powerful, right? As allies.
They're really strong compared to basically every creature on it.
But Maria and possibly more Chee, right?
At least the 3 who came over with her seem to be on her side.
Yeah, they don't
We don't know how many there are.
They're happy being a non-violent people. They don't want to. They think it's a privilege to be able to be that way. Yeah?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our whole dilemma, and we don't know how the Animorphs feel yet.
Yeah, they got to make up their minds. But Marco is, I think, very sold on the idea of teaming up with them.
He thinks they can kick butt.
Yeah, and he and Jake, I think, speak here, right? Would you end all that, Maria says, would you make us killers too? Marco says, yes, ma'am, I guess I would. We're in a fight for our lives here. Our parents, our brothers and sisters, our friends, they're all going to be slaves of the Yeerks if we don't win. Not the argument to use with the Chee. So I'll do whatever it takes. And then Jake says, we'll get that crystal for you. Tell us all you know about this Matcom and we'll get your crystal. Sorry, but Marco is right. The Yeerks have my brother. There's nothing I won't do to get it back. So for those two, it's personal.
And they already committed their words, which is especially funny when we get back upstairs. So they ride the fake elevator, the fake basement elevator, back up to the first floor, leaving the eerie golden world of dogs behind, which is a very weird description.
I wouldn't leave, honestly. I'd just be like, no, you're not going to fight the Yeerks. Can I just stay in the dog basement?
I got pissing dogs. I'm there. Anyway. So do we have a deal, Eric says. Will you get the crystal? And Marco cuts in, sounds good to me. Jake cuts in, unless anyone has an objection. Jake
Cassie's
started
like,
to
let's
say.
at least fucking talk. Rachel and Tobias aren't here.
Yeah.
And speaking of Rachel and Tobias,
But then they're interrupted. They hear a roar from upstairs. Marco instantly knows who it is. Cassie does too. She goes, Rachel.
Hi, this is Rachel. This is our Rachel. This is our bear, Rachel Rar.
So they're warning Eric. They're like, I think a friend of ours may have come in to rescue us.
oh yeah, Eric's like, I don't think it's gonna be a problem. And they're like, you don't know our friend. And then they get there, and an android, a Chi, has Rachel in a full Nelson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just
He's just holding her still.
easily passing the strength checks to do
It's
so.
Mr. King, right?
It's Mr. King, but he doesn't speak. So I don't have anything to say about that. But yeah, no.
Rachel's very upset. She was like, I waited a long time. I couldn't thought speak you guys. I thought you were dead. And they're like, it's cool.
We'll tell you all about it. Everything's cool. And then they sort of talk about like, why didn't Mr. King like kill Rachel or
He can't.
Yeah.
Right. But we do go through that song and dance one more time where it's like, why was he able to grasp her like that? And it's like, oh, because he was strong enough to restrain her to protect himself without harming her, He's allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Which is a more than useful technique. We could absolutely pivot that into being useful.
You guys use all the non-lethal force to knock
Right.
them out, and we'll slit the throats.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe like if they know
That
you're gonna
easy.
kill them, they can't do it. But like,
I don't know. I guess so.
Yeah. So they resolve that whole situation. They start to leave, and Marco pulls Eric aside. He talks to him about his memory of seeing. Am I missing anything here?
Him at the funeral.
No,
No,
okay.
I think you're right. I think as they're leaving,
It felt like an abrupt change, but it is an abrupt change. So
it is an abrupt change because like they just basically glossed that that Mr. King knew he wasn't in any danger. And then from that, he just really dives right into like, hey, Eric, you were at my mom's funeral. I don't think I said thanks at the time. Eric looked away and bit his lip. Marco, there's something I have to tell you. I think I already know. My mother isn't dead. She's a controller. She's Visser 1.
you guys have learned a lot.
Is that why you were at the funeral? Did you know?
I knew. I might have been able to save her. If.
Too late to save her. But payback's gonna be real painful for those filthy slugs.
They walk back to Cassie's barn and are filling in Rachel and Tobias. And Rachel's like, obviously go for it. That she guy seemed really strong. He even, gave me an excuse to use the word penetrate. So like, that sounds really weird out of context. What she says is they've already penetrated the
me standing in the line and be like, I don't remember
Miranda's,
that.
like, trying to some fan out there is digging this content, Miranda, but I
apologize. Cassie's like, I don't know. What, like, do we have a right to do this? To which I say, like, getting them the Pimalite crystal to make the decision themselves is not in itself making
actually-
the decision
yeah.
for them. So, like,
Yeah.
if they ask you to get this crystal, even if, like, that's not on you. You don't have to feel like you did this to them.
I don't know at what point we want to. I'm very confused by the Maria's argument. Maria representing a certain sect of the Chi. Like, they have been, who knows how many. We heard one story of them being enslaved to build the pyramids. I think if they could have killed that, could have gone a lot better. Like, I
don't know. They were raised by, like, and created by species that found, like, happiness in everything and just, like, loved living.
Mm-hmm.
So getting to live on may be its own reward to a lot of them. The Animorphs ask for Axe's opinion, being the non-human Animorph, or non-Animorph, depending on whose word you take. And he's like, look, we have Ciro's kindness. We're not supposed to interfere in other lives, but it's weird. They're older than us, so that feels like different than the way Ciro's kindness usually works. But also, just in general, I feel not good about helping create violence in the universe.
why is he stuck on the older part?
He doesn't like that for some reason. I feel like.
Yeah, I don't remember Ciro's kindness having anything to do with the age, but it seems to be assuming that they're more advanced because they were older.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is because Ciro's kindness need not exclusively apply to less advanced races, but as it comes to what would be considered probably more like quote unquote basic math and breakthroughs, if another species has achieved faster than light travel, you're allowed to talk to them about faster than light travel.
Totally. Yeah, that's just talking shop. That's just, good time.
But I think Axe doesn't like the idea that this cycle of violence has been going on longer than the Andalites have been a part of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They get Tobias's opinion.
Yeah, this is the most Tobias says in any of the books. Should we just read this? Do you want to read this?
Yeah, so Marco says, fight or die. And you want proof? Look at the Pemalites. They didn't fight. They died. All gone. No more. Scratch a whole species.
Rachel says, law of the jungle. You eat or get eaten.
And Tobias said,
maybe, Tobias said, speaking up for the first time. Take it away, Ed.
But still, wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't the law?
How can you take that attitude? You're a predator. You know how it is.
Yes, I know exactly how it is. That doesn't mean I like it. Look, the Pemalites were wiped out, maybe because they didn't fight. Maybe they'd have lost, even if they had fought. We'll never know. But the Chee have lived for thousands of years. I know they're androids, but they're a species, too. They've survived without killing. Doesn't something about that make you jealous? Don't you wish we could say the same? Don't you wish Homo sapiens could face the universe and honestly say, we do not kill, we don't enslave, we don't make war?
This feels like the argument of like early Survivor players where they wanted to be able to not lie at all. And it's really,
but it is a really hard question. I mean, Marco's response to it is, I don't make the rules. I didn't start the war. Humans didn't even start the war. And then he drops the bomb that his dad is involved with MatCom somehow, and the sharing has started trying to recruit his dad specifically for this MatCom project, which all has to do with this Pemalite crystal they're looking for.
Yeah. And then once he brings that up, they really don't have an answer to that. And Cassie walks down to the far end of the barn and comes back with a cage and brings them the animal that's going to solve all their Ocean's 11's needs. And it's a bat. It's a little tiny little bat. This is when Marco says the iconic line, cool. First I'm Spider-Man. Now I'm Bat Guy.
Now I'm Adam West.
And that's what they'll use to break into the Yerks.
MatCom.
Yeah, MatCom.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that just leapt out at me this time through that chapter is like, it actually hadn't dawned on me that he thought of his mom as a lost cause. And that like we're now pivoting to him saving his dad being what he thinks of as achievable, which is just, it's a subtle switch because I don't think that had been decided until this book. Chapter 19.
Math homework.
Yeah. Earlier we had a writing assignment and now we're doing homework at home. And we're doing homework and we get a phone call.
That's right. We have this, we're planning on going next weekend to get this crystal, right? We're going to get some bat morphing experience. We're going to get it. We're going to go in easy this time.
We're going to actually like read the book before we go see the movie. And that's what we're going to do this time. But as it always is in these books, the circumstances shift and we just don't have time. We don't have time to practice bat morph in this economy. The
stakes get that much higher.
We get a call from Eric. Luckily, Eric remembers that any of their phones could be tapped. So Eric is very subtle and says something to the effect of like, hey, you know that thing we were talking about doing in a little bit? What if we did it tonight?
What is Eric being very convincingly human? Like, so sometimes he lets his guard down a bit, but this time he's superhuman.
Honestly, I think it's just Marco trying to pretend that he can notice.
Yeah.
He's like looking back, he's like, there was always something about Eric, but this time he was being really convincing.
Yeah.
He's doing a good job.
I see it. I can appreciate his performance now.
I can still tell, but
Game recognizes games. Yeah. And we get a talk that we're going to, like, we have to meet up so that we can discuss this further. We call an emergency meeting. I don't recall where
we're doing it tonight. I don't know if we hit that.
Cassie's
We're doing
barn.
it tonight. We're doing the job, right? We don't have time to wait
Eric's
a week.
we
We have to do it tonight.
And Mark is like, cool, maybe I'll call someone about that. And then he calls everybody. He's like, oh my God, oh my fucking God.
Yeah.
It's time to go, yeah. And they meet up and they get asked one last time by Eric, like, are you guys doing this? And they all
Because
take a
it
vote.
turns out that they're putting in a new security system that will somehow totally make even this impossible.
Right.
They don't know what it is. They're like, how do we even know that it would stop us? And it's like, well, with it as well protected as it is, should we take that risk? And I'm like,
How could it make it
maybe.
easier?
Like-
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a job to do. We're going to MatCom.
Yeah. And I do want to hit one thing, which is that after they say yes, Eric goes into a detailed description of everything they need to memorize. And Marco realizes he really wished he could change his vote. But he's like, no, by then it was too late. We made our decision. And it was as if we were being swept toward a waterfall like a bunch of canoeists who had lost their paddles.
Yeah.
And canoeists is a wild word. I just want to say that. I want to take a moment to celebrate how good that word
Yeah.
is. All right. Chapter 20.
So they're already questioning the directions when they get to the top of the building, which was apparently not hard to get to in human morph. No, they flew as birds, but they're just like on a building and they're looking around and they're like, we got to find that pipe. And they're like, which corner was it? The southwest, the northwest, the
Cassie's
southeast?
like, it's the northwest, you idiot. And they all stand there and look at each other like they don't know which direction.
And Axe,
that is.
And Axe is like, you can't find directions.
Yeah.
All I have to do is let my tail go limp and it points north.
That's right. It's magnetic, you see.
I want to say we don't know the way that they handle this in the book is that we don't know their plan for infiltrating MatCom. We learn each step as it goes, right? So
That's right.
Yeah.
It's revealed to us as we go. We don't have a sense of how shitty their plan
Yes.
is.
So we find out that there's going to be some spidering.
So
And that they'll be spidering down a tiny little
Marco
vent.
and Axe specifically will be spidering.
And the plan is for them to drop down on silk.
Yes. Why they all couldn't be spiders, I don't understand. But that's what they.
Maybe they didn't all get the spider
That's what I
morph,
thought. It
but
was
I
too.
think that's
If it was
lazy.
tonight,
Like,
yeah. But otherwise, they would fall if they were cockroaches.
Yeah, I
and they
guess
don't
so.
stick to the inside of the tube. We don't need to get into this.
Cockroaches can fly.
No. We do need to get into this slightly briefly, which is that they climb up the outside of the tube, then they try and spelunk down the inside of the tube, and then they morphed spiders that don't particularly make a lot of silk. They are not known for making big webs. Yeah, so
Marco and Axe spin as they're falling in spider morph.
oh, it's
Weave.
beautiful.
It's adorable. They spin their webs together.
The exact line is, and I just want to say happy pride, everybody. My web looped around axes, and soon we were weaving a weird silk
dream.
rope. It's beautiful. It's what we all want to do
Oh,
with our
Axe.
partners.
And Marco's not ready to accept the feelings that came with this. He says, it was cool in a way till I felt a certain emptiness.
How fucking amazing is
know.
that?
That's
It's so
so
real.
cool. Oh
It's
my
we've all
God.
been there. We've all been there. Anyway, Axe, I'm running out of web.
Yes, me too.
How far do you think we've dropped, Axe?
I don't know.
It's a new voice.
You know which way is northwest, but you don't know which way is hell?
I think our plan has a minor flaw. And then they cut the ropes and they just dropped
Not their first time falling together.
bottom.
No,
Hoping
it's not
that they won't
They did that
die.
in Megamorphs. That's
They did
right.
that.
Well, they needed an
It was
exciting
so
end to the
good in
chapter.
Megamorphs.
They just fall hoping they won't die. And then
This
they
is
hit
really
something
good.
hard. They bounced. They hit again.
We've seen this before.
I know I talked about that coming up twice last time. This is the second time.
This is the second
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, lots of sound effects, lots of onomatopoeia in this back.
But then,
Whack, whack.
then they convince everybody else, hey, the whole web thing didn't work. Just jump down
Yeah.
the tube. It's going to be fine.
Do they not ride the silk for a little bit?
No, they do.
After they
ride the
clamber
silk.
down to the end of our silk. Yeah, so they ride down the silk and then they jump
Yeah.
off, which was sort of always the plan, but they thought that the silk was
The
going to last a little
cockroaches
longer.
would have survived the fall, though. Yes?
Yeah, I
Cockroaches
think
can
the cockroaches would
fly.
be fine.
Yeah. And they're
Cockroaches
indestructible.
can- Yeah.
So
They're indestructible. Also, most bugs are when dropped. Their terminal velocity is not enough to kill them.
That's true. They're like full of holes too for like air resistance.
So now they're in a heating/air conditioning vent. They are venturing towards the high security room, which is where the real trouble starts, as Marco says. They know there's a furnace along the way.
And they know they're going to have to go across it. They're going to have to cross the furnace.
They get chased by a rat. There's a very creepy description of the rat coming.
Very scary.
The thing I'd heard dragging was its naked tail and furred abdomen.
Yeah.
Don't like that at all. And we have every single time they have something happen in these dark vents, they explain it as though, oh, right, Eric said we would take a right turn here. Oh, right, Eric said there was one more drop. It's all very like...
And the chase scene is just, it goes on for a little while, but it's not that important. They drop down somewhere and then they see the furnace.
Well, they see...
Yeah, they're inside the furnace. They're on these like little spikes and they don't know that it's the furnace. These little spires with holes in them. And they're like walking along and like, Marco's like, where are we? And then he asks again, and Jake is like, why do you keep asking? It's not a good answer. And he looks up and recognizes the pilot light in the furnace and just realizes how F they are.
They're on the gas intake essentially, or like output, like they're on the little spires releasing gas into the furnace. So as long as no one turns on the heat, it's not a problem.
So if we are tracking time passing, I know we've talked about moon cycles. Rachel does mention it's too warm that they wouldn't be using heat, she hopes.
As she's saying this, essentially, as she's saying they have nothing to worry about, they just keep walking. They hear the hiss of the gas turn on, and we get an action hero style explosion where they escape just
all for
in
Marco.
the nick of time.
They literally get blown out. And Cassie and Marco sort of land in the back, like everybody else gets ahead and gets out. But like we get another, and this is another like callback to that Cassie and Marco, like Cassie making decisions that get Marco hurt or choosing to go back for Marco and things like that. But it just ends up basically being that they just barely make it out. It's
but they're fine.
There's a moment where it's like those two are in particular trouble, but then they make it out too.
And Axe makes a really nice little like, we should pour one out for the rat because it really saved our lives chasing us through. If we had been a second later, we'd have been like fried. And Marco imagines his detached Marco mass in Z space.
It's actually a big wad of Marco mass floating in Z space.
Yeah,
the fanfic writes itself.
So they continue through this maze. They're okay. And they just go through the maze, and they're going through switchback after switchback after switchback.
Oh yeah, but they recognize the maze, right? After a couple switchbacks, Marco puts it together. He's like, "Oh right, this is the maze that blocks out all the light. Not even a single photon can make it into this place, this chamber where they're holding
through this vent,
right?"
And then they come to a drop, and they know that below it is the high security room and the Pimalite crystal.
They drop down into the room and they morph back to being humans, and it is darker than dark.
Yeah.
So now they morph back into human because they can't morph straight into bats, as we all know. You have to morph back into human first.
Then they morph into bats.
And
Axe mentions even a single photon of light would set off the light sensors. This is complete darkness, like we were talking about. And I just want to talk about a single photon of light would set off the light sensors, but there's nothing that's sensitive enough to be set off by the sounds being emitted for echolocation by the bats. Like, that seems...
Well, they need to have a fatal flaw.
That's true. I will also point out that, like most security systems, I believe use infrared motion detectors to, like, detect the presence of a living being in a space it's not supposed to be.
Well, they said that there's like wires all over the floor or something. Or no, it's just crisscrossed with wires, like real wires.
Yeah, but infrared is something that your body just gives out in being a heat generating thing. Like we
true.
radiate infrared.
That's true.
And so the second you were in that room,
As
if
a
they
human.
just, the point is that there's like many ways in which like with how fragile this security system is, we should have set it off like 8 times.
Yeah.
Like why wouldn't you pop a microphone in that room and see if anybody's talking in there? If it's truly as isolated as it is, put a fucking,
But this is an impeccably planned mission. These kids have thought of everything.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
They have. I mean, they have absolutely thwarted every system put in place thus far. They went in through the vents. Now we're in the room. We're going to morph into a bat. And they're still asking themselves as they morph into bat, so how does this whole seeing in the dark thing work?
And then they scream. And they're like, oh.
Yeah.
It's echolocation.
Yeah. Now we're going to be, as they're flying through this, as they're navigating through this maze, this puzzle,
This
it's going to
is
be
a
very
cheat code
exciting.
for the Animorphs video game. Can you read this aloud, Eddie?
Yes, yeah. Left again, down, no, up, right, left, right, straight up.
Yes, and
Need
if
that
you
again?
enter that, you will get an extra life on the stealth mission, okay? Remember that, because that's what Marco does is he flies through all the wires
Yeah,
to get
guess
to
what?
the podium where the crystal is sitting.
That's right. We're flying to the center. We make some jokes about it being like trusting the force and using the force. And then we're just there.
That's our description. That's our description of them.
And there's no pressure sensors on the podium.
Yeah, they can
There's
land there.
they
That's
can just
fucking fine.
land there.
And then I believe the fucking crystal they're after is like all the wires. It's in a bed of wires, but none are attached to it.
we do get
They could just pluck it.
I like to think this is a reference to episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where Anakin says, now that's what I call pod racing. We get Marco say, okay, now that is a roller coaster ride. Yes! He's incredibly jazzed. Not quite as good a line, but, it'll do. So they have it. Everything's solved now, right? They made it to the crystal?
Right.
Yeah,
they're
they
all
did exactly
bats.
what they
They're
set out
all
to
on
do.
the podium. They're all on the crystal. And the only thing we have to do is get out of there with it. And they talk about that a little bit. They talk about how does a bat carry things? And the answer is a bat doesn't really carry things. It's not like a bird, which can grip it from the husks.
They do have little feet, but they're
Well,
not
and
really going to
actually-
be
Adorable little feet.
this.
My understanding is that when they catch food, if you ever watch high speed footage, they actually do catch with their wings and arms, and they'll actually put it in their mouth while they're flying. That I believe is true.
But that's a brief moment of not flying to continue flying. They can't
Right.
just carry something a
Right.
distance. And if you try to carry it in your mouth, how do you echolocate?
Exactly. Jugglers are so weak that they have to keep the balls in the air and let gravity do half the work.
Now, I think personally the simple answer is to fly back as bats and simply surround Marco and sort of shove him in the directions, because he can hear their echolocation. So if the person directly in front of you echolocates, you do have a sense of where that is. And as long as he's in front of you to stop you from hitting something, like, I think they could have made this work. But they don't.
They don't.
They don't make it work.
No, they don't even try. They
Don't even
go,
try. They
we're-
actually give up. They're going to go, we're
Rachel
gonna work
path.
big. Yeah, and we're going to storm our way out of
They're
here. We
going
got
total
the goods.
Schwarzenegger, as
Total
Marco says.
Schwarzenegger. Yeah, and they describe that as being ironic, which I don't fully understand, but maybe I'm not old enough to understand.
Yeah. And I don't think Axe will get this hung up. Cassie says something about tempting the irony gods. Axe follows up on this as if it might be a real thing. I think this is Axe learning to have a sense of humor, but
Maybe.
they fight their way out.
Yeah, and it's really ugly. Basically, they
it's
morph
so
into their
ugly.
strongest morphs, knowing
Their
that
signature
they are about their signature morphs. We got Rachel the grizzly, we got Jake the tiger, Marco the gorilla, Cassie the
Now,
wolf.
how strong is Marco? How would you measure?
As a gorilla,
Marco's
he's
strength?
pretty strong. He's stronger than the strongest human.
Yeah, but like, would you say like stronger than 3, 4, maybe 5 strong men?
Oh, that's helpful.
Like consecutively, or
Respectively.
it would depend on the men.
So they
Okay.
really, like, Marco really drills it home where, like, he just feels like he's in the footage of World War II where they're about to land on Normandy.
Oh,
where
yeah,
it's
storming.
Joe, he
Just
doesn't
like
say
the
that
beaches.
word, though. He just describes
Yeah.
it.
So yeah, Rachel just tears through the wires as a bear. They all just go running. The alarm is like loud and deafening. They get a door open and they can suddenly see
Yeah, Marco's holding onto the crystal. It's Marco who's got it.
most human
And-
hands. Except for Axe, who has weak hands.
Yes, and Axe axes in his Andalite morph, and trust me, when you've seen an Andalite in battle, you know that tail is all he needs.
And that's
one more shout out to the tail.
It's the last kinky thought he has before dying.
In his life, yeah.
In his life, like
They
in his
see
first life.
a bunch of Hork-Bajir,
And a bunch of men with automatic rifles waiting for them in the hallway to their escape. They're literally like 100 feet from the door. And crammed in there is a ton of men with guns and a ton of Hork-Bajir, top Hork-Bajir, who are going to tear them to shreds.
55-year-old blonde woman.
Who is the only person keeping MacCom together.
So I want to ask about her. We get a description of her. A human controller stepped out in front. We're at chapter 24, right?
It's Miss Paloma.
She was a nice-looking, middle-aged woman wearing normal street clothes. She had bleach blonde hair. This could be my mother. But then Marco says she could have been someone's grandmother.
Well, she could be.
Your mom
Eddie.
could be somebody's grandmother.
I know. I'm 32. I forget that sometimes. But I was thinking,
Eddie.
Yeah,
She's
when
waiting.
are you having a baby?
yeah. So she's thrilled. No, she's actually, her face is twitching with tension, I should say.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You're the Andalite bandits. You've done me a big favor. When I turn you over to Visser 3, he'll promote me 2 grades, maybe 3." Sorry.
She sings it and swings her fingers around 3 fingers.
This is a good scene for the musical. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I have very small knowledge of musicals, but I could see West Side Story. It's a face-off, a dance-off, right? The 2 groups. Yeah.
And then, so they're really dead to rights here, but in this parlay, when they're talking to this woman, they reveal that they have the crystal, that they actually got it.
Yeah.
And this is when this sort of levels, this takes us from a firing squad into a brawl, into like a rumble, if you will, to keep that West Side Story thread going.
We also get an indication that this crystal is incredibly valuable, not just to the Chee. And like we've heard about this like supposed master plan that they have, but she says specifically that the crystal is worth more than the mothership and everything in it. Because everybody's like, why can't we just shoot them? We're not going to hit the crystal. There's like almost no chance. And they're like, don't care. She's like, any chance is no.
Right. It's almost like they got this crystal and it was supposed to be like, oh, here's how we conquer Earth in a day. And then we'll go to the next planet and we'll conquer this planet. And it would basically make them the Howlers. Like, it would make them that powerful, but it just didn't come to be.
It'd be cool if in the show...
That's what the device was.
Has.
Yeah. The device.
Oh, yeah.
That would be cool.
There is someone is very similar to Marco here. Someone, when she says lower those guns, what? Some guy behind her yelled, we have them cold. Which is what Marco said.
We have them by the short and cold.
Yeah.
Anyway, she convinces everybody to not use guns and to do this the old-fashioned way with Hork-Bajir and some animals from the zoo.
They see Eric,
who could do nothing to help us at all. They see him,
He's watching through the window. Yeah, we were all going to lose. We're going to die.
They've got 24 Hork-Bajir. The men with guns have stepped away and their situation has not improved.
The Hork-Bajir are still so intimidating. And,
elite Hork-Bajir.
And they see back through everyone. They see through the glass door. They see Eric, who is the whole point of this thing. They're getting the crystal to get to Eric, who could do nothing to help them, was, programmed to do no harm.
Like a child at a bakery shop window. That's what I imagine his face pressed stance.
Are we saying that he can't stop the Hork-Bajir without killing them then?
Yeah, I guess so, man. He
could do something.
That's what I'm saying. He could
stop one though without.
He could distract them. He could play with them. There's options. But the point is, in this book, there are no options, evidently, or at least Eric didn't think of them, because this all happens so fast.
And then Marco gets a hole in his stomach.
This gets so fucking gory. We talk about Hork-Bajir leaping on him. He gets tackled by one, punches the other, looks down, and yes, his insides are on his outsides.
He gets a gash on his arm. He's crushing a Hork-Bajir's throat.
All the while, he's trying to compliment his friends for doing glorious work in battle, but
Jake leaps through the air and closes his jaws around a Hork-Bajir's face. Non-lethal? Rachel swings her pod, opens up a Hork-Bajir like someone cleaning a fish.
Very lethal.
I saw Cassie dodging swiftly, biting, backing away, lunging to bite again. Red foam flying from her muzzle.
Eventually lethal, yeah.
Yes. Axe striking again, with the deadly speed and perfect accuracy of his hand-light tail. Another mention of the tail.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But
for anyone keeping
You said
track.
we were done.
No. We're never done with the tail. Let's be real. That's what we started this podcast. But it's
No
really
hands.
no hands, all tail, baby.
Oh, and the alarm's been going off the whole time. It
Yes.
didn't even
Scream,
stop for the
scream.
face-off. It's just screeching through the air.
But no matter how you spin it, looking at this battle, no matter how few hands you count on the enemy, the hands are still not in our favor. We are losing. We are losing bad. And we go to thought speak screams. Oh God, someone screamed. Maybe it was me. I don't know. Help, help, get him off me. Look out. No. It was all one combined thought speech scream.
No! That's
Yeah,
how it is.
exactly. And then in his dying moments where he is literally going in and out of consciousness.
A blade sinks into his heart.
Yes.
His gorilla heart.
His gorilla heart. He's literally got
They specify.
10 or 8 seconds left.
Yeah.
And I put those in the right order. But he's got he's got mere moments to work with here. And he decides, I'll just throw my lifeless body at my best friend Eric, who went to my mom's funeral.
Through a red mist,
Yes.
Marco saw his face.
But he doesn't even make it there on his own. He gets thrown into the glass window by a Hork-Bajir. Kicked, yes. Moved into it. And he gets there and his hand...
I just didn't know they kicked.
Yes.
So,
his
of
hand
course.
just ends up just outside the glass barrier, sealed with the computer clutched
He can
tight.
feel his brain shutting down.
Yes, he is dying. He is very
And
much
their
dying.
human controllers are now here hammering him with the butts of their guns.
With his last strength, he rams his fist through the glass, and he feels strong fingers pry open his hand, and the crystal is lifted out.
But we don't know who got it.
He seemed like he was in his last moments, but then, later, much later, someone slapped my face. Morph back, Marco! Morph back! Do it!
He wakes up on the ground.
This shit is so
I
effed.
can't.
Yeah, this is so
fucking deal
effed.
with his book.
Yeah, so it's so effed. He wakes up out in the dirt, and he doesn't know where he is, and he asks, and we're like in a copse of trees, like just down the road from MacCom. Then
No, he actually wakes up and goes, human! Then he comments on the copse of trees.
And he hears a voice sobbing. He sees
it's
everyone.
like, why is somebody crying? I'm
he's-
alive.
he
The
moves
cute
on
one
from
made
it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I was so close to being dead. That's crazy. And Jake's
You-
like,
You were
you were.
dead.
He said, solemnly, I fucking Marco.
He gave you an electric shock to start your heart again. Who did?
So Jake gestures, he jerks his head toward the source of the crying. It was Eric, sitting in the dirt with his head
Still
down.
maintaining the hologram.
Yes, yeah. Where are we, he asks. Little bunch of trees just down from MatCom, or what's left of MatCom.
Which, like, did they set off a bomb?
Cassie
Like,
comes-
what happened?
Yeah. I think Eric was the bomb, basically. Cassie comes over, explains, you saved us by getting the crystal to Eric. He used it. He rewrote his programming. He's the one who...
Wait a second. How did Eric take care of the Hork-Bajir, though?
What are you
He
talking
destroyed them all. X said.
You were reading?
I almost
I
laughed.
thought it was a genuine question.
You don't think much of me, do you?
Eric took out 24 Hork-Bajir.
No one laughed with me. Eric had stopped sobbing. I thought, why would a robot cry?
Do androids cry for electric dead? All the Hork-Bajir, all the human controllers.
Even
That's
Grandma.
a lot for this book. Right? Like, for these books, like, taking out Hork-Bajir has been very normalized, but
But telling us that
Humans.
humans
Yeah,
died.
we're leveling up.
and Rachel
Yeah.
says it took about 10 seconds.
So can we speculate here? What does Eric turn into?
So
What
I've
does he
seen a
do?
lot of speed runs recently, and what I'm imagining is like, I don't think he turns into much, but I imagine the quickity of which he moves, if that were a real word, is
Which? The quickity of which he moves.
I think it's Sonic's homing attack. I think it's like
Okay. I was thinking more Blendo from Robot Wars.
Oh, got you. Yeah, the thing that spins.
They had to ban it. Because I think he just like spins his body so fast that he just destroys.
So I, for some reason, imagined Scyther, but that's more Hork-Bajir,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
I really think it's like a speed run though, where you don't even know you're seeing success. Like, I think it's like you're like, I don't even understand what I just saw. Like, so many things are now body parts, and like it's got to be utterly horrifying. They meditate on this a little bit, like, that he was able to like save them all, bring Marco back to life, and even sewed back on Axe's arm and repaired it.
Yep.
To the point where it's just a scar. Mm-hmm. So Rachel says it lasted about 10 seconds. She closed her eyes, trying not to remember what she had seen, but I guess the images weren't easily shut out. She opened her eyes again, and to my utter amazement, I saw tears. That's what brought the horror home to me. Rachel's tears. Mm-hmm. Then Axe says it was extremely brutal. Very brutal and very swift. He carried us here. He revived you. He even reattached my arm, which you hit, Chris.
Yeah, he hasn't said anything since, Cassie said. He won't talk to any of us. He saved us, though, right? I said, yeah, he saved our lives and lost his own soul, Cassie said.
That's Cassie.
Just fucking...
And then Marco, he goes over to Eric. He wanted to thank him. He wanted to tell him he'd done what was right. He'd beaten the bad guys, saved the good guys. He stood as Marco comes over. You okay, man? Marco asks.
Then Marco ponders something in a moment about the nature of Android's work that I think is very interesting, which is like, did he have to think to make the hologram cry? Like, how did that work? And I don't know why, but I
like that too. Yeah.
Should we do this exchange?
Sure.
Like,
sure. Yeah. No, Eric was not okay. Who wants Marco?
You saved our lives, Eric.
How do you live with the memory? He asked.
And then Marco thinks, I knew what he meant. See, win or lose, right or wrong, the memory of violence sits inside your head. It sits there like some lump you can't quite swallow. It sits there, a black hole that darkens hope and eats away at everyday happiness like a cancer. It's the shadow you take into your own heart and try to live with. I shrugged. I guess I try not to think about it. I try and forget. And after a while, the nightmares don't happen as much.
Eric put a finger to his head. Android, he said. He made a bitter, ruined smile. I can't forget. See? I can never forget anything.
That's a really like horrifying thing to think about.
Yeah.
As a human, because even as we talk about, how do you live with the memory of doing something horrible or even
trauma,
just something
or
bad,
just trauma in general.
Yeah, even just bad things that happen to you.
Yeah.
The human mind does, like, memory does sort of degrade over time.
Absolutely. It's why I can make 9/11 jokes. It's like, but very seriously, it's like you were so abstracted beyond it, and I don't remember how terrified I was at the time, and I don't remember how scary it all was in particular. I mean, I have a sense of it, but I don't have that
you sort
visceral
of remember it
fear.
like someone reading it from a book, like reading back in the log of, yes, I was scared. Like,
yeah, it's like the question this book is interested in is like, because we know the Animorphs are capable of violence, but like, how are they capable of it? Because it's not just that the androids aren't capable by programming, but even when they lift the programming, the cost is so high because they have to actually live with it.
After thousands of years of not doing it, and then live with it, like, literally perfectly burned in their memories, recorded in every detail that they can. Anytime they think of it, they will imagine it perfectly. There's no way they can be like, it wasn't that bad. There's no way they can, like.
And just also that, like, it's not just their programming, it is a moral code. It's a value of theirs that these androids have a sense of morality, because strictly speaking, that is not how we treat androids in our writing usually. So
I will also say, and this is just like a personal, I just really like the visual nature of certain parts of this book, like, I think is really, really strong. And Eric putting a finger to his head.
Android.
And saying android, and then the bitter ruined smile and everything. It's like a very anime moment to me.
It is.
Yeah.
like-
The gestures are really strong in this.
And it's like I can like see it, but I like in my head I'm directing it like an anime. Like I don't know why it reads anime to me, but
No, absolutely. Yeah.
I think Eric comes across strongly through this whole, like, I feel like I can imagine the way that he moves and the way that he talks. I feel like he just comes through.
Just
really
like
Yeah.
Vin Diesel.
I think.
In this conversation with Eric and Marco, Eric reveals to Marco that he's undone what he did with the crystal,
Yes.
and that he has returned his programming to its pacifist origin. And he hands the crystal to Marco, saying, maybe at times I can tell you things and give you information, but I'll never fight again. I can't join in this war, my friend. And Eric walks away at this point. They all go home to their beds. This happens very fast.
I like this moment with that line. We went to our homes and crawled into our beds. Our parents never knew we'd left.
Yeah.
It's just a really good way of
Yeah.
reminding us that they're kids. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. I was beyond exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. Too many images, too many memories. And I was afraid of the nightmares. There are evil things in life. And I guess there are times when a human being has to fight those evils. I closed my eyes and wandered lost and afraid through my nightmares. And already my mind was forgetting.
it's really incredible.
It's really good. It's really good. It's so dramatic and so nicely given.
he's fun Marco. That's who he is. That's what his books are like when you read them.
Yeah.
It's just,
So lighthearted, so full of joy. Now we get
Yeah.
into chapter 26, our required chill out chapter after
Yeah.
we've all been
Yeah, so-
devastated.
and you know-
Close out.
Because it opens up, go boy! And they're playing with dogs on the beach. Jake and Marco
Specifically,
are.
they're throwing frisbees for Homer. Homer has not gotten any endorsements yet, and they act like he's cool about it, but I know that it's really been weighing on him lately.
Well, the only saving grace is he's good. He's clear for the Olympics this year. He can go back to the dog Olympics. He's not a professional. Tobias is overhead riding the thermals. Just nice to know he's around, I guess.
You don't want to read your note there, Chris? You don't want to...
What did I say?
Tobias was high overhead riding the thermals, and you went, in public?
I honestly forgot. I didn't remember.
I
writing
burst out laughing when I read it. My hair had finally grown out a little, but I'd gotten used to having it shorter. I decided to keep it that way, just to spite everyone.
Good for you, Marco.
I think
Yeah.
he probably, the sides at least, were cropped really, really short.
I think so.
They're just
I
not
think, yeah.
buzzed anymore. I don't think a lot of time has passed. You have to go to the shop like every week or two to keep those up.
Yeah.
Well, he's not afraid to see Charisse. He trusts Charisse.
Because can we talk about this? I know we touched on the beginning. I don't feel like I get this thread. But I
hair?
know, Miranda, you had said something about the appearances. Like,
I
what are
think
they?
There's a level of appearances for just as a thread with the chi, and that the chi.
Oh, and the
are
hologram and putting up a
truly-
facade.
and they're like truly fictional people. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think it means more for Marco, like the changing of appearances.
And he's owning something about
Yeah.
himself despite not getting approval from others.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it. But I just think like they wanted to put a focus on outside appearances in this book to get
Yeah,
you
that makes
thinking
sense.
about Eric and Eric's appearance and why is Eric's appearance weird?
Yeah, that's
and,
the best. That's the best I can see about it. Is
Yeah.
like, yeah,
It also just feels like a nice touch of like, that is something that matters when you're 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, it brings it back.
they're playing fetch with Homer, and they're talking about how he's not that good at fetch, and then they're like, no, you don't understand. Fetch is a very complicated game, and if the right interactions are not given at the right times, if you don't pull the right lever, the dog will not give the frisbee back.
It's true.
Marco talks about actually watching the dogs play. He talks about how it must have been a really nice place, and Jake knew exactly what he was talking about, which is the Pemolite homeworld. That was actually unintentional. It's just 10:30 and I'm tired. And how it would have been nice. And he ran into Eric at the 7-Eleven, and Eric was just sobbing, staring into the hot dog roller.
No.
They're very sad. It's a grotesque thing
all
that they
those
have in there.
skewered limbs he'd seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, he ran into Eric at the 7-Eleven. It was actually probably just a flimsy excuse. He had probably been seeking Marco out to give him this phone number, you see, to an untapped, absolutely safe burner phone of Eric's in case they ever need to get in contact to ask questions about aliens or the war. But this is the only way that the Chee are going to offer their services. They just can't be a part of the fighting part. They
come up again, right?
They must.
Well, they literally ask it in the book. They explain that the phone can't be tapped even if it wanted to or whatever. I shrugged. So he says if we ever need him, we could leave him a message at that number. And if he has something to tell us, he'll record a message for us. Huh. Jake grunted. Think anything will ever come of it?
Oh, it's more like,
I don't know, I said, but I think the Chee are going to go on fighting.
The Yeerks, they'll just be doing it in their own way.
And then he reaches into his pocket and he's like, oh yeah, I still have this fucking crystal. I tried to give it to Eric and he just like vomited profusely. No, he just like wouldn't talk to me about it. And apparently it's the most powerful computer on Earth or possibly ever created. So like, what should I do?
And at that exact moment, the dogs are all staring at Marco.
Holding the crystal.
And they're like, what the fuck you doing with that crystal?
He swears he sees some flicker of intelligence.
Yeah, like Tom says in Shaggy Dog. And he had his hand out looking at this crystal, and Homer just jumps up and scarfs it away. But he doesn't eat it. He runs away with it and drops it into the ocean.
Yep, they all go running down, splash it into the water. You know, they swim out a little ways and then come back to shore, shake themselves off, and Pima-Light crystal is gone. It's gone, guys.
Yeah.
It could easily wash ashore and the Yeerks could find it. It's...
Well, no, but other things in the ocean, nothing washed ashore in book 4, right?
No, there's no Andalite technology.
No.
And then they chase the kids.
Ed, you are playing dumb on purpose, and I will not have it.
I'm just being a dog.
You're just being a dog. You're just playing.
What if the dogs, there's no Pima-Light trace there, and they just actually thought it was a toy, and they're like, they're so smart,
and everyone,
so wise,
everyone,
so majestic.
I have to tell you, that's how the book ends.
It's literally how it ends. You were all duped. We were all duped. Your dog is smarter than you. That's the moral of the story here.
So
Yuka walks you, Ed. Yuka walks.
How do we leave this book different from how we came into it? We know about the Chee. We know about the Pima-Lights.
We know about the Howlers. We know about the...
can call them.
Yep, that's the big change.
Everything's
and
gone.
we know that...
We discovered the most incredible computer ever created, and we let a dog throw it in the ocean.
Now, the computer could come back, and also, I want to point out, dogs are now whales.
We shouldn't be morphing dogs.
Well, no, that's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say is it is critical to know that dogs may actually help on their own at a later juncture. If they're smart enough to hide the computer, they might. That's
a good point. Dogs
rouse
maybe
again
come
at some
out.
point.
If we now know dogs, you mentioned whales. If we now know dogs have little Pima-Light essence in them.
Ew.
Well, they do, Chris. So it was grafted there. What about the whales? Where'd the whales come from?
That's a really good question. Yeah. What poor alien species was like,
they got a little bit of Elmas essence in them, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
We all do.
We all do.
So. Verb of the book?
Lulled.
Lulled again? Yeah, lulled again.
Grafted run around.
Scamp of the book? Marco.
Oh, it's Marco. It's Marco. He got it again. Mm-hmm. Eric, pretty good scamp.
I really liked Eric. He was a fun character.
He was a real scamp when he got that crystal at the end.
Yeah.
Got into some mischief.
I loved when he was sobbing in the 7-Eleven. That was my favorite part.
He wasn't, but it didn't look all right.
It's in the text.
He said it doesn't say he was crying.
Men often underreport their extreme feelings. Sorry, male presenting androids.
Thanks for listening to Anidorks. We'll be back soon with lots more to say. Until the Andalites return, or at least until next time. See you soon.